All right. So today's topic is automated workflows. There are several components to workflows. So we're going to go through a few feature sets that you might need in order, and then we're going to focus on automated workflows that are related to open enrollment for either Medicare or ACA. So a typical workflow usually is so that way you can message people. Like if a new lead comes in with the status of new lead, you send them an email minute one, you add them to a call queue, etc. And usually that's going based off of status. But for open enrollment, you need to message a whole slew of people at once, regardless of their status, their leads. But if they're clients, excuse me, if they're clients, you don't want to have to change their status to trigger the workflow. So the way that you can do it is by creating a tag. We probably already have a tag in there for you, but if you don't have it, it's settings. Go to account tags, edit, and then you can add in a tag of annual review needed, or I think we've called it AEP review needed in the past. That's probably what's in your tags already. But then if you don't have a tag and you need one, you just add the tag in and you hit add tag. So you're going to name it and then add it. That's step one. Super simple. The next aspect is you might need to create your call queues that you're going to want to have associated with the campaign. So you're going to go to settings, phone dialer, call queues. You'll add the description of AEP clients, for example, versus AEP leads, because you'll probably have different messaging for the clients versus the leads. And you can put it to a sort order that's either, sort order 1 for clients, sort order 2 for leads, or if you keep it at 999, if you keep it at 99 and every sort order is the same, it'll just automatically alphabetize it for you. So whatever you want to do there. And then who's able to use the call queue? Is it all users or only a specific user, or maybe a few people that are able to use this call queue in the system? And then you hit add. So these are the users within your system that would have access to the call queue. Okay, then the next thing you need to do before we get to the automated workflow is go into templates. This is where you're going to create your templates or edit the ones that we have in here for you. So that way you can get some nice AEP messaging. So AEP number 1, schedule your annual Medicare review today, for example. Now, one important thing, if you're going to be using the appointment calendar like we covered yesterday, you need to tell them when they're booking it that they need to use the same name, phone, and email that you have on file for them when booking the appointment. So please make sure to include that in your messaging as you start your request for them to book the appointments. If they're a client, you might also want to enable self-service as part of the workflow. Self-service is an opportunity for them to have a portal link into what their policies are. So if you enable self-service, they'll get a secure portal where they can see their policies, your contact information, any documents you've shared with them, and then whatever prescriptions and providers you have on file for them. They can also add in their own prescriptions. And if they do that, it will show up in your system for them. So they can update their prescriptions and providers by using the self-service portal. So it's very helpful. You'll obviously only want to automate that for your clients or when somebody becomes a client. But that's available. You can learn more about the self-service portal on the training that's on our help app. Going back to templates, we'll want to create a series of these emails, right? Because you're going to want to touch them several times throughout open enrollment until they do the booking of the appointment. Because the goal of this workflow, at least in my opinion, in this example, is that I want to not have to talk to the person before the appointment time. So yesterday we created that appointment booking calendar that it can actually create a scope of appointment as soon as they book the appointment date. The appointment date gets onto the scope of appointment. They sign it in advance of the appointment, and then I meet with them, and my life is easier. I have less work to do to follow up with them. So getting it so that way they book that appointment on their own is the goal. So having at least a few emails is going to be helpful. So you'll notice here I've got AP1, and then I've got 2, 3, and then maybe you even have like a final one at the end of open enrollment to be like, hey, just checking in, you know, your Medicare plan will roll over unless we make a change to it before whatever the date is. But, you know, I would love to review your options with you so that we make sure you're still on the right plan. So having a series of those is going to be helpful. You can learn more about editing email templates, but some basics that you might want to consider. You can have that appointment calendar in there. You just pop in the URL or your agent calendar link, snippet code there. Excuse me. You can add in video. You can add in images. You can add in a whole slew of things. But the more elements that you put into this messaging, the more it potentially might get flagged as spam. Especially for your leads, you want to have very simple, relevant email messaging. Pretty much that should be the general rule for marketing, period. But for open enrollment, make it simple, easy to read, and actionable. So having them book that appointment is really the goal of this action. So make the actionable action noticeable rather than putting too much fluff in these emails. You also want to make sure that you have your required signature lines. We now have something called saved rows, where you can build your email signature line and drag it over. And then, most importantly for compliance, you can drag over your physical address and CMS disclaimer to the bottom of this. So you can use saved rows now in a way that is going to make it easier to build these templates on the fly like this. The requirement of having your physical address in the email is a Spam Can Act requirement. It's not a radius requirement or CMS, it's Spam Can Act thing. If you are an independent agent, you might want to use your FMOs if you can, just so you don't have to put your own personal address in there. But make sure if it's a Medicare plan that you're selling, that you have the CMS disclaimer at the bottom there. Okay. So once you've built out these things, you can now go down to settings, automated workflows, edit. Now we can build as many as we need. Add a workflow. So we probably are going to do AP leads, 4 leads, tagged with annual review needed, or appointment needed, whatever you want to call that tag. That's it. That's the only trigger that you'll need. We're going to learn about how to trigger this later. Basically, you're just going to bulk update everybody to that tag so it triggers when you want it. But let's dive in now, add some actions. You can notice you can create a task, send an email, text, add or remove a tag, add a note, reassign an agent or a record status, add or remove from a call queue, convert to a different record type, Although you can't convert from client to lead or agent to another record type if you have the AMS plan. Just FYI. You can mail a postcard or a letter if you have direct mail manager. That's only an integration with them. You can enable that self-service portal that I showed you. Or if you're super fancy and you really understand what it is, you can use HTTP trigger. I'm not going to go into that last one because it's just very complicated. And unless you really know what you're doing, don't do it. For the most part, first thing you're going to do is send an email. Even if you don't think people check their emails, their smartphones do. So the reason why I'm saying that is because then if they don't check their email, but they've got your contact information in that email, when you go to call them, it will say possibly Danielle Bond instead of saying potential spam. This is very important to know. Okay, so I'm going to send it to the record. So the record is either the lead or the client instead of the assigned agent or specific agent or specific email address. I could send it to the assigned agent. I could send it to a specific agent, or I could send it to a specific email address. This is really helpful if you need to send it to like an underwriter instead. But in this case, we're sending it to the record and we're going to select AAP number 1. Save that action. Now I'm going to keep on adding to this. I still don't want to talk to these people because guess what? I'm going to trigger this the first day I can start my marketing, which is, I think, October 1st. I don't know, something like that. So I don't want to talk to them yet, but I can market to them behind the scenes. So maybe, oh wait, no, this is for leads. So I'm not going to send them a text message because unless you have an opt-in that's very explicit for your leads, you can't text them. So maybe I'll send them another email maybe 3 days later for AAP number 2. Right? I'm going to keep on adding these actions. Then once I'm ready to actually try to call them, I can add them into the call queue. So maybe a week later, I'll put them into AAP leads call queue. Then I can keep on adding in all of these actions. So that way, from October 1st through the end of open enrollment, I've messaged them until they have booked their appointment with me. Now, I can also add supplemental stuff to this. So if I go back to workflow home and I add another workflow, what I could do is add it for AP leads with text consent. So this is for leads tagged with annual review needed plus opt-in for text is yes. So if you've been tracking who's given you permission to text, you could have a supplemental workflow for them. So after 1 minute to the record, I could say, hello, first name. Thank you for your interest in discussing your Medicare options with me for 2025. Here's my calendar to choose from, or just text me back with good availability between the dates of 11/7 through 1:30, whatever it is, right? And then you're going to pop in your calendar link. This information pulls from your agent profile. So whatever you've listed in that calendar link field is what's going to display there. The assigned agent's name, we can pop into the end of this. Thanks. Agent name. And so here you see below a preview of how this will look to them. It will say sent by Best Insurance Ever. That is a requirement. Your account name will have to be in there. And then it says reply stop to unsubscribe. That is a requirement by the FCC, not us, but we just give you that feature so that way you're covered. What you should do is copy this text and go to something called charactercounttool.com. You're going to paste in what you just wrote to see how many characters it is. Because your SMS credits, they are 160 characters each per credit. So at this rate, we're going to be spending at least 3 credits for this one send of this one text. If you want to get it down, you could just do something like this. You could go, thanks for your interest, right? In discussing this, make it shorter, simpler, so that way it's less of a character count. Also, if you have special characters, that does count against your character count. So if you use an emoji that actually is like a combination of a ton of characters, so it's going to really impact your character count. My recommendation is for this kind of messaging, you probably do need to be more specific. You probably do need to have a higher character count SMS message, but you can use this tool to make it a little bit more simplistic and less characters. So that way, at the very least, you're aware of why you're, using up so many SMS credits so fast. Okay. Okay, so then we're going to go down here, save this action, and you can keep on adding more actions to this, right? So again, it's just for people who are leads, who have opted in for texting for annual enrollment appointment needed. Then you can also do something similar for clients with different messaging, more specific. In that case, for the clients, let me just show you something I did earlier today. For clients, you might have that first email sent out to them, but then you might enable that self-service portal right away. You might send a text message immediately. And then you can keep layering email text until you actually add them into the call queue. And then at the end of the time period, you can follow up with the final text to say, checking in one last time to see if you want to book that annual review. Your plan will roll over, but I'd love to meet with you to make sure you're on the best, most affordable plan. Then at the very end of AAP, so maybe 110 days after you've started this campaign, you're going to remove them from the call queue. So that way that's cleaned out before end of AAP. And then the final action will be remove tag of AAP review needed or annual review needed, whatever you've called it. That way, if you have built this out, next year you can just tweak the messaging. You don't have to rebuild it. So if you were with us last year and you built an open enrollment automation, you could reuse it because all you'll have to do is re-trigger it with that tag. You will want to review the actions and the emails and the messages to make sure that you have the right language, everything's compliant, all of that good stuff. So you should still review what you've done, but you don't have to redo the whole thing if you use this method. This has already been a ton of information. Any questions so far? Okay. All right, so that's the primary information that I wanted to cover. I do want to just say, as far as SMS reporting goes, I think we covered this a little bit the other day on the compliance elements, but you can go to SMS delivery and you can actually search against your workflows to see how successful they are, how many opt-outs you've had, etc. I'll just select all for now. And I can run that report to see how many went through properly, how many were unsubscribed, how many were blocked, and how many opt-outs did I get recently. Levon asked, will Kellogg be getting those saved rows from earlier? Yes, I believe that they're in there. If they're not, I'll double check that for you. Okay, and then as far as well, there's one more thing that I was gonna say. I'm sorry, you guys. I'm still rather sick, and I'm very excited to be healthy again. Oh, stopping the trigger. So how do you start and stop the trigger? Wow, that would have been a bummer if I missed that. Okay, so you're gonna start the trigger on October 1st, right? So that's, I think, the first day that you're allowed to start marketing, at least for the Medicare side. So what we're gonna do is put a task in so that we remember to do this. So reminder to trigger automations for AP with tag of annual review needed. When? October 1st, 9 a.m. Right? Category is going to just be like follow up or do something, I don't know, generic task, and then add task. So that way you get reminded on that date and you remember to do this. Then on October 1st, you are going to go to your leads. You are going to scroll down to the bottom of the page. You're going to change it to 500 per page. You're going to select all. You're going to bulk update. And you're going to add that tag in of annual review needed and hit submit. That will trigger the workflow to begin. Now, if you have a lot of clients, you might need to do this instead as like an export of your record IDs for each of your clients or your leads, and then you would re-import it with adding that tag in with like you'll keep the record ID column, and then you would add a column for the tag, and add that tag in that way. So that way the update can do it rather than the bulk update system. Because with the bulk update system, you can really only do about 500 at a time. Otherwise, it'll time out. You could also have your agents do it if you're a larger agency. You could tell each of your agents to do it themselves. So hopefully that's a smaller, more manageable number. But those are the two options to trigger it, either using the import and using it as like a large update file, or you just select all, bulk update, and add that tag and submit. Then once the person has booked their annual review, the agent will need to go in. Let me see. Where is this? I'm trying to find somebody that has the tag. Let me just add it in. Give me a second. Okay. So see how this person has the tag of annual review needed. The agent will need to remove that tag to stop the workflow. So see how below here, like this other workflow was ended early. So that is just saying that it's not going to generate any of the workflow actions any longer. So to stop the workflow, you're going to click on this little X, and that's going to remove the tag, and it's going to end that workflow early. If I added the tag back in, it would start the whole campaign over again. So let me show you how that would look. So, because I think this AP review needed is the one that has like more of those actions. So I triggered that workflow, and see how I've got all of these pending workflow actions now for this person. The way that I stop that is they book the meeting, and then I, as the agent, go in and I remove the tag. And all of a sudden, those are going to get removed. There you go. They're all gone. The only one that wouldn't be removed automatically is the task. So don't use tasks, okay? Because then it's just going to junk up your calendar. So everything other than tasks would get automatically removed. Anything that has been sent to them has been sent to them, but that workflow can end early. Okay, that's what I wanted to cover. Are there any other questions? Otherwise, Levon, I can specifically check your account with you. I'm going to hold on that question until the end of this. Is there anybody else with a question on this topic? All right, I'll stop this recording, hopefully.